We do have some folks remote, so I'll ask everyone who's speaking to speak very clearly and loudly so their phone can hopefully pick it up the best that it can, so the folks remote can participate. So with that, we'll call the regular meeting of the Nevada City Council to order, Monday, May 28th, 2024, 6 o'clock p.m. Can we get a roll call, please?
Melissa Newsom. Here. Senator Corbin.
Here.
Dane Nielsen.
Here.
Jason Sampson.
Here.
Steve Skaggs.
Here.
Sandy Earth. Here.
First item is approval of the agenda.
Move to approve. Second.
Dane and Steve, any discussion on the agenda? Seeing none, council, please vote. That, I think, was approved. So we'll move to public hearings. The first public hearing is on the 19th Street Trail Project. We'll open the public hearing on the trail project. Did we receive any comments, Aaron? Is there anyone here to speak in the public hearing on the 19th Street proposed trail project? Seeing none, we will close the public hearing, which moves us to resolution number 85, 2023-2024. A resolution finally approving and confirming plan specifications, forms of contract, and estimate of cost for the 19th Street Trail project.
Move to approve.
Second.
Steve, Sandy? Seeing no discussion, council, please vote. That is approved, which takes us into consideration of bids for the 19th Street Trail project. So with that comes also has resolution number 86, 2023-2024, a resolution awarding contract for the 19th Street Trail project.
Move to approve the consideration of bids and the resolution.
I think that is the resolution.
Number.
You see the resolution.
Okay, thank you. Here, we'll move to the resolution.
Moved by Sandy.
Second.
Second by Dane. Discussion on the contract award resolution. Seeing none, council, please vote. That is approved, which takes us to the consent agenda. Any item may be removed for separate consideration.
Move to approve.
Jason and Melissa. Seeing no discussion, council, please vote. That's approved. Takes us to public forum, time set aside for comments from the public on topics of city business other than those listed on the agenda. No action may be taken, and Brenda Dreyer's keeping us moving right along, is already ready for us at the beginning of the public forum to talk about human services grant funding.
Let that handout get around to all of you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight wearing my Nevada Foundation hat. It seems that time just goes by quickly and we need to discuss another human services funding round. And so that's the purpose of my comments this evening. We're quickly approaching the start of a new fiscal year. Through your budgeting process, you set aside $35,000 for the purpose of addressing the basic needs of food, shelter, and clothing for citizens of Nevada. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to recommend all of you that we kick off the funding round. I'll host an informational session ahead of your next council meeting. We have folks that haven't applied before, and then we'll ask that applications be due on July 5th, and then we'll discuss those after the committee has scored those with the goal of notifying those folks before the end of July. That would maximize the opportunity for folks to get those dollars out into the follow the same process we have before. We'll utilize the application, I believe Aaron has reviewed that. We'll have them sign a contract for those services. We will not, release any funds until they have turned in appropriate documentation. They're all part of the process. I'll get the word out. I'll lean on Marla to help me get the word out through the city's website, the digital media. I'll announce it in the Emily announced it at the Main Street Board with some applicants in, and I'll see you again in July.
Okay, continuing on in the public forum, is there anyone else here to speak in the public forum this evening? And seeing none, we will close the public forum, moving to old business A, approved pay request number 21, partial retainage for Fieldhouse project from HPC LLC in the amount of $227,942.60.
Move to approve.
Steve and Melissa. Seeing no discussion, council, please vote. That is approved. Takes us to new business A, resolution number 87, 2023-2024, a resolution in support of a workforce housing tax incentive application to be submitted to IEDA by Diamond F Properties for a housing project in Nevada, Trailside Edition.
Move to approve.
Second.
Sandy, Dane. Seeing no discussion, council, please vote. That's approved, which takes us to B, ordinance number 1056, 2023-2024, an ordinance amending chapter 62, general traffic regulations of the city code by establishing school zones in certain areas of town.
Move to approve.
Second. Jason, Henry, any discussion there?
What exactly does that mean? I went and tried to read through the ordinance, to find a little more definition of that, but
Yeah,
I
so,
struggled.
so currently we don't have anything set up for school zones in our city, so if a police officer did pull someone over for, really anything, we'd be able to only allow for what our fee appendix goes for, so this allows the fees to be more stringent if
So
someone is
greater
speeding.
penalties if there is a violation of it.
Correct. Yeah, we'll need to update the signage in order for it to be applicable.
That's what I thought.
Anything else on school zones?
So I've got it straight. Because it's a school zone, is that like a state line, 20 miles an hour, but where you're at, or?
Still
we never
goes,
have that in there?
still falls underneath, what our current speed zones are listed in that. And if we need to change those, we can always do that. We just need to provide the guidance so I can give you that.
Seeing no further discussion, council, please vote. Your first reading is approved. Which takes us to C, resolution number 88, 2023-2024, a resolution accepting easement option agreement between the city of Nevada, Iowa and ITC Midwest LLC.
I'll move to approve.
Steve, Sandy? Seeing no discussion, council, please vote. That is approved, which takes us to D, which is very timely. Approved council chambers AV system. Motion by Henry. Second by Dane. Any discussion there?
We need it badly.
2007 technology. Okay. And council, please vote. And that is approved. So I'll look forward to having a digital system that talks to Zoom and things better. Takes us into reports. We'll start with city administrator, and in the interest of time, with staff reports, if it's something that is in addition to your written report, we'll have you make your way to the mic so we can keep them moving. So we'll start with Jordan.
I have nothing more except for if you guys have questions about my written report.
And then I don't have much besides what we're already going to talk about tonight, so we'll move on to council reports. Okay, and anybody on staff have anything that you would like to add to written reports? Okay. Made the whole round. Nobody's making eye contact. Okay, good.
Second.
Motion by Dane, second by Jason. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so that concludes the regular meeting, which then will move us into the work session. So we'll transition into that. So thanks everybody for being timely so we could get to this. We'll need to have a Zoom on in case there's anybody that is. I don't know if anybody from Burke's team is going to be remote, but we were going to make sure they had the option. So, and then looks like Michael's on there. Okay, sounds good. Yeah, so we'll go ahead and leave the Zoom on again. We'll ask everybody to please speak up so that can be picked up by this phone up here. And just kind of to set the stage, we intend this to be a collaborative discussion where we can ask questions, everybody learn and be on the same page and move forward in that manner. So with that, I'll probably hand it over to our staff to begin the discussion on where we are and lead the discussion tonight.
Yeah, so we're gonna start off with the presentation from Ed Askew, Askew Scientific, and he's gonna go over his proposal that we have all been discussing, and then we'll talk with Michael about his new numbers that he was able to calculate for us and get to us, and then we also have Karen's numbers that were sent to you, but with the updated ones that from the email that you sent to us on Friday. Yep, you're up.
Okay,
Do we have the PowerPoint that we need? Scan that.
He was coming for just more questions.
Okay, so we'll get the PowerPoint up and then we'll probably have Ed go over to the podium there and might move the.
I only have a few slides, and
Okay.
I'm turning it over to Karen.
Okay, so when she gets here, we'll have you both do that and then we'll probably figure out where to best set the phone. We're waiting. I do want to thank everybody for being here for the conversation. I guess just for everyone, we can give a little history lesson too. Henry was asking a little bit from having missed the beginning of what got us here. So with the new wastewater treatment plant, it was always the intention to take a deep dive of the new plant and the new costs and really do an analysis of the cost structure of the new plant when it got close to being built, which is when the council looked at the proposal to do a study on that, which got us the data here we're going to hear. So that's kind of what led us here. Obviously, we've heard some concerns from some important constituents in the community, and so we wanted to take a pause on moving forward so that everyone can have a discussion of where we are and have council hear the same discussion as everybody else and hopefully get some questions answered.
Can I make a comment on that? So, again, not knowing, bringing everybody up to speed, I'll say, with more backstory. I was president during the time from 2015 through 2023, and involved in all of the conversations on Berg. I think it's important just so everybody's aware that the city was already in the design phase of the wastewater treatment facility, and the ask from Berg was to make it larger to be able to accommodate our expansion. So I've heard some comments that this was built for Berg. And I think it's important that we set that record straight. So maybe we have any questions on that. Probably now's that time to have it, just so we give this thing taking some emotional turns, trying to remove the emotion from it.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Yep.
Yes, please.
And since this is a joint thing between Karen and myself, these slides were created from paperwork, tables, calculations that Karen performed, looking at rates, structures, costs, and such. Mine's a little different. Mine is just a little bit of an explanation of what's going out there. You know, we were talking about getting rid of all of the emotional baggage with this. So, not to upset anybody, but my slides are going to be talking about surcharge. So I'll just say next slide. Next slide. Okay, kind of hard to see this. I believe handouts were created. I don't know if they got out to everybody or not on this, but basically I'll just read from the slide there. All right, in the data currently is the charge. What is the surcharge? In the data currently it is the charge applied to the pounds of CBOD, TSS, TKN, and oil grease that exceeds the base concentration limits set for these pollutants in the base flow charge. That means you pay so much per 1,000 gallons, you're paying for a set amount of CBOD, TSS, TKN, and oil grease already in that charge. So 300 milligrams per liter, and the poundage that can be calculated from that, 300 milligrams per liter TSS, CBOD, 35 milligrams per liter TKN, and 300 milligrams per liter oil and grease. Now, you pay for 1,000 gallons. That concentration is calculated into that 1,000 gallons. All right? So that means that any discharger is already charged for the base pounds of these pollutants in the base flow charge. That means you take flow in millions of gallons, be discharged times 8.34 times the concentration 300 or such. That's the poundage that you have already paid for in that flow charge, not additional. So what is a surcharge? A surcharge is applied to all measured wastewater discharges, measured. That means you have to have a sampler on it, measure what's coming out, to collect revenue to cover the cost of operation and maintenance of a PODW from pollutant loading above the engineered design loading utilized. All right, so the design load where they say, here's the base flow coming through, and this is according to my rock. They use 300, 335, and 300 oil and grease, correct?
Not for this facility, no, the load is provided by, for how much they contribute, so it's not calculated based off these.
But for surcharge, it is.
First, the definition of surcharge here, yes,
Yes.
that is how it works.
All right. So what surcharge is not? It's not a fine. It's not a fine. Don't consider it a fine. It's a usage charge. And it's not a double charge for all wastewater pollutants discharged, only for the ones above those limits that you bill as a surcharge. Next slide. So the next slide is kind of hard, like put a big table up, it's really hard to read. That is a bill that is created by the wastewater plant. This is actually a copy of one of the ones they created last year. And in it, they calculate what the surcharge rate is. So next slide, I've taken the bottom part of that bill and I've expanded it. And it's kind of hard again to read on this screen. But basically what they've done is they've taken the flow and they've multiplied it times the concentration that was determined by sampling times 8.34, and they come up with the total pounds leaving. Then they take that same flow, and let's say for CVOD, they multiply that flow times 8.34 times 300. Remember the 300 number? They get that poundage. So that is the non-surcharge pounds. They subtract that number from the total poundage calculated, and what's left over is the surcharge pounds. So you can see that you get 300 milligrams per liter, 300 milligrams per liter, 35 times 8.34 times your flow in millions of gallons. You already, when you pay for per gallon of flow or per 1,000 gallons, you already paid for that. Now, does it mean you always use it all? No, but that is your base bill. Then they turn around, because they've already charged you for that in the flow. They say anything above that in poundages, you got to pay for it. That's not double charging. That is only charging for the amount that's above the base. That's what we've got. So that's surcharge. So what do you charge for it? Well, again, that's what this work session is, part of the work on it. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen, because the next part of this presentation are the tables she generated, the fee calculation. I wish we could expand that. I don't know, can you make that, expand the size of that so people can see those numbers, Karen, or not?
Yeah, we can't see all that, Terry. Like, it's cut off halfway right there.
Can you, even when you toggle on here, it does?
Yeah, we was the right side of our screen.
I'm just
Yeah,
saying
we
on these
can see all of the numbers.
If I'd known this, I would have just made them bigger so they would expand out. So I'll let you take over from your Karen, if you don't mind.
And all I did was your tier system, and so I can't explain the tier system. Not my system. I just
Well,
used the number we were trying to get. To meet our, O&M expenses, equipment, and stuff.
well, right now, you have no tiers in your sewage charge system. Everybody pays the same rate per 1,000 gallons. Whether it's a home, whether it is a commercial business, whether it is a large industry or a small industry, you pay the same rate per 1,000 gallons. That means you pay the same rate to treat that. Now, that's one philosophy. Problem is, Karen, if we keep that same rate for everybody, what per 1,000 gallons are we going up to from where we are now?
Well, it's around $11 for every month.
Per 1,000 gallons.
Almost construction fee, which would be different.
That's
than
not
this.
including any debt.
Right. It's just a flat rate. The tier system, I went out and I looked at other cities, and other cities use the tier system, stating the fact is, okay, for 1,000 gallons, if we don't have a flow system there where we're measuring the flow coming out and taking samples so we can figure out how many pounds are coming out, concentration-wise, we don't have that. How do we equate the loading and the demand on the wastewater plant, let's say, for what is discharged out of a Casey's kitchen compared to your home kitchen? That's where the tier system comes in. If you are not being monitored, that means we're constantly measuring what's coming out so we can measure if you have a surcharge or not. The tier system takes into account that you're dumping more or discharging more in pollutants that we have to treat per gallon of water than the base domestic rate of home. So if you think about it, all right, we have Casey's Kitchen, we have restaurants, we have McDonald's. Per gallon of water coming out, are they discharging the same strength as your home kitchen? Same way with industry. So that's where the tier system came into is you're going to be utilizing more per gallon leaving the facility than the domestic. Domestic is the baseline. So how are you going to collect the usage rates per gallon discharge if the strength is strong? You just say it's all even across and everybody pays the same and it all goes up? Or do you say we're going to tier what is being charged? Now, we took the tier system and manipulated it and said, okay, if we have different flows, and these are different tier industries, and they pay this amount, will it not exceed what is needed to run the plant and pay off the debt? That's one of the questions. You shouldn't be collecting more than what is needed. So at that point, it was modified, and I don't know, what did we come out with in your calculation there, Karen, on that? The multiplier for a tier, let's say tier 3, what was it? It was 3.5, 2.75. So that drops it down to say a tier 3 is now paying 2.75 times more per 1,000 gallons than the homeowner. So that is where we're sitting at in the tier system. Now, again, that is just one way to run the plant. That's what this workstation is for. Is what does what does the council want on how they are going to assess the basically uniform, fair, I use the term fair, that's been brought up. Is it going to be uniform across, or are we going to tier it where we know you're sending more, therefore you should pay more per 1,000 gallons because of what you're sending? It's stronger. Again, think of a good analogy is what's coming out of McDonald's per 1,000 gallons versus what's coming out of your home, even with a dishwasher and a washing machine per 1,000 gallons. There's your difference, because the tier system is not just being applied to one industry. It's being looked at by all the commercials that are heavy users and all of the industries in town. What are their usages? And we have found there are more industries in town that should have been looked at and now are being looked at because of what they discharge to this sanitary sewer. And there's a few that didn't surprise what they do to the plant. So the tier system is, again, one of the ways to look at it. In the end, it's going to be the council's decision on how do you want to pay for the operations of the plant, the O&M of the plant. And here's something, you've had a lot of rain recently, right? Tornadoes, a lot of rain, heavy rain. Harold, what was the highest flow going into your plant here with the ion, inflow and infiltration?
Oh, the one day it was over.
Yeah, and what's that right now?
I still don't know which.
Yeah, that's just water percolating into your sewer line. That's that's in the ground percolating into the sewer lines. So this O&M cost you're thinking about, I'm just giving you my own advice. Not just the wastewater plant. It's the lift station pumping it out to the wastewater plant, and it's every new and old sewer in your town, because that's part of the TOTW, is the collection. So any money that you raise, if you have not been putting money back in the O&M of your sewer lines, that's something that you're gonna have to cover. Now, it was brought up as an emergency. How much did you want to keep on hand as an emergency? Karen?
250.
Right. Right.
100,000 for I&I.
Yeah.
Whatever.
100,000 for I&I. Well, you can see what's coming through right now with heavy rain. And remember, and I'll just bring this up again as a warning, you're gonna have to pump that all the way out to your new plant. It's not just flowing down and going into your current plant. It's gonna flow down to your old plant, and then you're gonna have to pump it out to your new plant. And can you do that when you get 5 million gallons a day? And if it doesn't, guess what? It backs up in the sewer, and guess whose basement drains it comes up? And if you get water coming up to the basement drain, that is a reportable sanitary sewer overflow that you have to report to Iowa DNR. Let alone the homeowner, you know, if their basement gets flooded. So again, I'm wandering off point here just a little bit, but what I'm saying is the money you end up raising, how you want to raise it, not just for the new plant, and not just to pay the loan for the plant that got hit by a tornado. Before it's even on in use, you get hit by a tornado. Not just for that, it's for all of your sewer system here in town. So, and the manholes, and the covers, and all that other business. I'll leave it with that, and, at that point, I'll leave it open to the council. Any questions? Did I just state it before you did tears? Some people are grinning. Yeah, before the tears. But anyway, so, yeah, so I'm trying to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly all at once.
Thanks, Ed, appreciate that. Michael, I believe Karen has your new figures up, on her hard drive, so if you'd like to discuss, all of the updated numbers that you were able to update.
So should we, I'm not sure, it seems like there's a pattern of flow that we want to follow here, so I don't want to. We're kind of talking about rates, we're going to talk about the operating model, the targeted number, right, to keep the solvent.
So, yeah, so what Michael's gonna be going over is that number that you're referring to, so where we're at right now.
Should we have a conversation on rates, or you want to do both, and then we can come back and have it?
Let's go over what Michael is discussing, and then if you have questions over that, feel free to chime in during the time so we can start the conversation.
Okay.
So this is the capital cost breakdown now for cost share project. We've seen this before, we've gone through this, and this is the percent calculated that initially we were around 25% mark. So this spreadsheet is, very detailed. I'm not gonna go through Excel or anything. But essentially what it does is it looks at every line item of the project, it's broken down into those, so every element, pump sewer, the force main, the lift station, each treatment process. And then it looks at the amount of capacity that's used from first projected flows, design flows, and loadings. Take that into account against design, overall design capacity. Each process is calculated like how much percent of the lift station does. And there's multiple scenarios that are designed on the same parameters. For example, the lift station is all designed low capacity, comes to water. So we designed that on the overall peak hour capacity that's required for the DNR design station. Then we look at how much of Earth's total flow, that total design capacity is, and we calculate out essentially. We do the same thing at every single unit process out of the treatment, all the biological processes, all these various things. They're based on either the amount of flow, the volume of water that has to be put through, or the amount of pollution load that has to be treated by that process. Whether that's carbon fraction, BOD, nitrogen fraction, the phosphorus fraction, or a combination of all those. And each of those processes is looked at on which scenario control. So there are some processes that are really designed based off of a max of 30-day loading. All regulations require that to be designed. Others are based off of more of a load factor. And essentially all that was looked at, put in, calculated through, and then it takes all the unit processes, various percentages, all of those, and averages it up. I also included, for George's request, looking at the actual costs, capital costs from the construction contracts, overall updated the actual dollar amount. Then we take the percent of use, average that across all of it, and that's where we come up with updated number, updated value. That's what 30%. So this is the exact same thing that we went through years ago, just updated numbers in calculation. There's been some additional line items that were added in here based off of the project and how things have gone. We included, there was a general requirements cost as part of the overall project, that's a line item. There's been change orders that happened on the general plant project so far. Previously, if you remember, there was a contingency line item in here. Prior to actually getting anything done, we had final numbers. Some aren't final yet as well, but we removed that contingency line item and actually place that with some actually known costs. Taking those and then splitting that out in fashion, calculate that. Any questions on kind of that overall explanation?
Questions, I have a comment. Kind of goes back to the working relationship which created our agreement in our agreement with the city of Nevada of our capital portion. So that's a very technical analysis. We were involved with the discussion on understanding every individual line item, and we signed off, and it's in our agreement, notarized, that at that time, it was believed that our portion was 23.4%. We later did a similar exercise, as some of those numbers were further along. We were provided 24.1%. Again, full transparency, while working through the numbers together, and if I hear Mike explain it correctly, you looked at it again, and now that number is 30%. I'll say, we haven't seen that. Anybody seen that? Okay. We haven't seen that, but it would be logical, in my opinion, to assume that we will get that. We will have our technical experts look at that, and it's very likely that we have no issue with that. And so instead of paying $16 million, which is the last number I have, 24.1% of the total cost, we would use 30% in theory, we would make a capital payment to cover that. We have no issues with that. Very technical, very transparent, and we're talking the same language. Okay? No issues with that. So just to be clear, what Mike just covered, we've never had a disagreement. We haven't seen what he walked us through. So I don't, so we're not, this isn't what we're talking about here at all. When we talk about our opposite ends of the spectrum with this agreement or this negotiation. Questions, comments on that? Oh, we do. Yeah, we can't read them up here, so.
We'd be happy to share those with you.
Yeah.
I asked him, I believe it was the beginning of last week, to do that, and he was able to provide those numbers today, so that's why you haven't received them, or else you would have.
So just maybe backing up, where we're, I'll say number one, confused, is we've had an agreement with the city of Nevada roughly 40 years. We've used the same model, modifying it as it made sense, to ensure a fair and equitable relationship between the city, the business, and the community members, and it's been successful. We have had ongoing annual, at least annual, sometimes more, reviews with the city, pre-expansion, to ensure that that model was working for them. And we could provide notes, they're available on that. We have never been brought to our attention that the current model wasn't working. And in fact, I think you'll probably see that there's been a significant surplus for the city through this agreement, which we've never challenged. Now we're talking post-expansion. What's being presented to us is significantly, materially, at opposite ends of the spectrum, a completely different approach to the agreement. So we're challenged is trying to understand what brought that forward. Why are we talking about something that is not even nearly reflective of what's been successful for the entire community for 40 years? That's my first question. I'm not sure if, maybe it's not a question, because you all need to weigh in on what are the next steps. So I need to understand, are you really asking us to rip up everything that's worked and to go down a different path? Because if that's the ask, I want to make sure that we're all clear that that is the ask. If that is the ask, then I would say let's review more than just one rate structure. Hormel has 35 plants across this country, 5 of them in Iowa. None of them look anything like this.
How many of those plants has the city had to invest into a $62 million plant? How many
of them have a capital portion? 60, I don't know what the number is. I mean, it's an ongoing. Cities invest in wastewater facilities. We're a major user in all of our communities, and whether you're making a capital investment or you're building new, it happens all the time. My final point, I'm not sure where this is going to go from here. We haven't talked about the operating budgets. We were given an estimate on what the cost for ongoing operation and maintenance of $1.864 million. However, we were asked to work rates against a $2.766 million number. There's a $900,000 per year contingency that's been added to the operating expenses. And I understand there's a lot of unknowns, But 40, I have the math here somewhere, 48.4% higher in contingency. And that doesn't just get added to Burke's rate. That gets added to every single citizen, every business, and certainly Burke is going to pay 48% higher than what you're anticipating your operating expenses. Again, Burke is a voice of one on that. You need all of the community, I think, to weigh in on if they want to pay 48% more for the unknown. I'm going to say we don't like it, but that's not a Burke issue. That's a community issue.
So Chad, just for clarification, the $1.8 million that you're referring to, that is the current operating and maintenance. That is not the new plant, correct?
No, that's what you provided us for your estimated operating maintenance of the new facility.
The 2.8 is what we provided for the new, I believe.
2.8 includes the $900,000.
The 1.8, I believe, is the former. Is that correct, Karen?
Maybe Connor is
Correct, so yeah, the line item budget we received was 1.8 million, with then a 10% reserve to cover the SRF loan, 25% reserve on top of that, I'm guessing for unforeseen, and $250,000 additional. And that's where Scott is bringing up that the issue of the unforeseen, but also the idea being that that reserve should be, for that 35% to be a one-time thing. Once you get 35% set aside in reserve, it should not have to be completed in everyone's rate. That should continually collect 30% for the set aside reserve. In the event that happens, that's where we ran into an issue of building that into a base rate. But how do we correct for that in the future after we already get to that?
Okay, so yeah, 1.689, and then you have the 1.35% or 135%, which is your 10% SRF, 25% reserve. Then you have the addition of the annual projects equipment revolving of 250, and then 10% of your debt yearly payment, which is the 2.8 million you're referring to.
$900,000 big cost.
But see, that's the additional annual projects equipment revolving and the 10% of debt yearly payment. That's part of the operation because we're required by SRF to have the additional 10%. And then the 250,000, that's for the yearly capital improvements. That is for your INI, which I believe in my email that I sent back to you for the INI, that number can change. It can lower. We're just putting that in there to make, hopefully we don't have that many issues and we don't have to spend the INI. Currently, I believe we had, previous years, we had 25,000 in there and we bumped it up to 50,000 for 1 year because we knew we had an aging plant. So hopefully we don't have those issues with our new plant. So that is something that is adjustable that we can.
I understand all that.
And my understanding too of INI is to get at, the description about all the stormwater that we're all wasting money to treat. So if we let those lines continue to infiltrate, it'll just get worse and worse. So at some point we need to invest enough that we can get the system, because one of the concerns I think we all have now that the plant's being close to being done is that lift station, being a limiting factor of future expansion of the community. So the less flow that goes to that lift station from stormwater, the better we will be just for the longevity of this money we're investing now. Because I think the last thing we all want to do is have to upgrade the capacity of stuff sooner the next time we have a new expansion in the community because of stormwater. So that's where the importance of that line comes from in particular.
My only, I understand the response. My only point is, one, if the community is good with a $900,000 contingency, we're just a voice of one. Number two, if that is what we're gonna settle on, then it shouldn't be in rate. It gonna be an ongoing perpetual 35% contingency, we would ask that we would have a conversation on how is it handled, when is it turned on and off, what can the money be used for, you know, et cetera. We had a broader conversation than just Burke. I think it needs to call to attention.
Well, and I don't think it's speaking out of turn to say that the council would not intend to keep having reserves built to a point that they're not needed. So I think the intention of being reserved at an appropriate point that would be adjusted for. Again, I think we can talk about how and when and what that looks like and what the thresholds needed are, but I don't think to your point, everyone in the community is paying a higher rate to build this plant, so I don't think anybody wants to click the button on a higher rate than necessary, because it's going to be painful no matter where we land.
But that's not what was presented.
I think that's a fair point, and I don't know if there has been discussion about reserve, if there's a point in time that there's a certain amount of money that needs to be there, and then that goes away, or what that is.
Well, cities aren't really supposed to be carrying more than 25% at any given time, because really, we need to be able to pay the bills for a quarter of the year without running any money, or running out of any money. You know, because things do come up, and there are times where things are tight. I mean, especially with our current wastewater plant, there's a lot of things that are just breaking, and Harold's been doing a fabulous job of putting Band-Aids on those and getting everything by for our new plant. So, as far as reserves though, yeah, cities don't typically keep reserves above that 25% because, I don't know if it's a state law or if it's an unwritten kind of no-no, but essentially what it means to me is if we're keeping more reserves, then we're keeping too much of taxpayers' money or charging them too much for certain services and things like that. So that is why we're always cognizant of that 25% or below.
And so to make sure I'm doing the math in my head correctly, we're talking about we need a balance of 25% of that 1.8 million annual operating costs.
Correct.
So I think wherever it comes out, I think we can probably do the math on when that gets there and what we need to hold. Ed?
I'll jump in here. I'll give you two examples. City of Muscatine started fixing their sewer problems 30 years ago, and they're still working on it. Where they're consistently moving forward, and every reserve they already have some type of study saying where they're going to spend it. So they already, as they collect the reserve, have plans on where they're going to utilize it, not just hold on to it. On the other hand, City of Keokuk did not do that. Now they're looking at a $200 million project. They're figuring out how to drop it down to $50 million under EPA requirements. So what I'm saying is, it's nice to have the reserve. No, you don't just keep adding to it. But you also should have already started, or soon to be started, plans on what you're going to use that reserve for. I'm sure there have been projects that have been put off for years because you didn't want to raise the capital money to fix it. And now that you have a chance to start doing that, it would be a good idea, fiduciarily responsible idea, to start saying, we're going to collect this reserve. We have some for emergency, but do we have a plan on what we're going to be utilizing it for? So as you pointed out, we don't want to treat stormwater. We want to make sure that we have enough capacity with what you built. And groundwater is not something you want to treat. So those are things, just right here, 5 million gallons a day from the rain, and it's still at 2 million gallons. That means it's leaking all over the place at the tip. There are a lot of projects just from that information. You could probably say, we're going to have this money, let's use it wisely, let's fix the leaks. Don't wait till it's so bad that then it's catastrophic.
That That is something we consistently try to do. We bought a truck to televise the lines so we can try to figure some of these problems out for our next project. We have about 3.5 to 4 blocks that we're fixing right now. Brandon, not to catch you off guard or anything, but you know what, the amount of our project is sanitary for around the school? Currently, I think we're at $2 million for the project alone, or $1.8 million for the project alone. Can you tell me the? Yeah.
But yeah, it's,
And another issue we have too are the collector lines for sump pumps, because my understanding is state code change, and we used to require, as homes changed ownership, they had to collect, or they had to hook up appropriately. Now the council has the decision, since we can't require that anymore, I think we'd have to go inspect everybody and get in, basically knock on everybody's door as the police and hook them up, or have some sort of thing like the sidewalk program where we do a cost share to kind of the carrot method to get everybody hooked up correctly. So that's one of the challenges, is we have a lot of sump pumps inappropriately discharging into our sanitary sewer, and we need to get those out of there. There's another piece of the discussion of what's wrong with the system.
All super valid, and all which we wholeheartedly support. But challenge would be adding that to ongoing rates versus handling it separately, having some sort of transparency, and discussion around that for the entire community.
It probably isn't appropriate to have just a large reserve fund that you really need to build it into capital projects that's voted on and considered, not just the $900,000 reserve fund that you can anyway fund. It needs to be built into the operation budget. Part.
We do have a capital improvements plan, and we update it on a yearly basis, and it goes out 5 years. So we do actually have a CIP in progress that we're continuing to work on and updating on a regular basis, and that is something the council has approved.
But that much should be funded out of the reserve fund. We're holding back for emergencies.
It's part of our budget, it's an overall part of our office.
I do think it's helpful feedback, because I think everyone's going to have to think about the numbers here, and I don't think, that's why we're having this, nothing's in stone, so I think we all have our wheels spinning.
yeah, it'd be interesting in seeing what the numbers look like with the new 30% work. Capital cost share, thank you.
Yeah, so that is roughly about $18.6 million that we would be receiving rather than the 16 million or 16.1. We have not been able to recalculate the rate structure with those figures yet. And it is something that we plan on doing, but we just got that 30% earlier today. So it takes us a little bit longer to get all those calculations figured out.
Basically, you have two things to think about too, is one, how do you pay for the ongoing operation and maintenance of the plant? And two, how are we paying for the debt on building the plant? So regardless of everybody's rate structure, residents, whoever, you have two buckets of money you have to think about how to generate. And I think there are multiple models. The development committee looked at the debt model and different scenarios there on how to generate that portion of the bill, because it's a different line item on everybody's bill for the debt. So there's different models to pay for that. And then there's obviously the base rate for operation and maintenance. So we have a big giant puzzle in front of us.
So Karen, do you have the debt schedule, or not the debt schedule, but the Excel that shows estimation of debt if Burke paid off the 16 million, and then how much that would cost for that portion per user. No, I'm talking about the one that shows,
Yeah.
15.45, yep, this one, correct, yeah. So this shows the, essentially per 1,000 gallons, you can see 15.45 per 1,000 gallons versus $11.54 per 1,000 gallons. Aaron, do you want to explain this a little bit further?
It just shows, the first one, it's 16 million was paid off. This was just an estimation over above, the one below is the, that's what would be left of the debt. And slice it by a couple different ways, per user or per 1,000 gallons. If the 16 million was paid, and then on the other side, if they didn't pay. Per user, 87.59 per user, or 11.48 per thousand.
And so,
Without them paying, the first one's.
so I think the differences would be over the, if it did take the full 30 years to pay off the plant, the amount per user is higher if FERC doesn't pay, but in the short term, it was flipped.
Higher if per debt.
In the short term or the long term, or both.
Oh,
Okay.
because the loan changes in 42, the amount of the loan changes. The amount that is over. Like in 42, it would change to $18.19 per thousand or $65.80.
And so as you can see, there's multiple scenarios in here. One is a per user charge, one is a per, you have a use-based charge with gallons. There's scenarios where Burke pays a large check up front. There's scenarios where they pay over time. So there's a plethora of scenarios.
There is, and I'm thinking my spot, but when we had a difficult time running a scenario where we cut the city a check for the upfront payment, that in any way, shape, or form, that would drive a higher rate to, there's some math there that we couldn't come to. The one thing, our recommendation, what we could do either way, our recommendation, in the city's best interest, is you take the check. For some strange reason, if Burke cuts down or a tornado hits Burke and we decide not to rebuild there, we have the money. So that from day one, that was our recommendation, plus to give you, a good balance in your kitty to pull from. But if you really want to dig into the details, I would have my team run the analysis, because we can't come to a scenario where us paying up front would penalize any other use. we pay, you know, the loan goes from 60 million to 44.
Right, but there's only one loan that is currently at 16.12 million, and that's the additional loan that we took out for that portion that you're referring to. So the remaining 30-year loan that we have is a completely different loan. So that is the reason why there's a little bit of a difference there, is because citizens would be paying for 30 years of this loan.
Because the interest would be,
Yeah.
I mean, there.
That's the thing either way. That's the thing.
All I did was take off that last loan, and the rest of it is. And
I'm sorry, we can't get,
going off of what? Or amortization.
I think it's small in the scheme of things, but
Well, it's $4 per 1,000 gallons per user.
yeah. Well, it's okay, and if that's gonna be a point of disagreement, then we should work on that together. Because the last thing we want any citizen of Beta to feel is that they're paying anything on behalf of Burke.
Mm-hmm.
All Burke has ever want, we want to pay our fair share, and we want to pay it as quickly as we can, and move on and continue to be great partners with everybody that we cross paths. So if that's the case, I will tell you right now, we will pay more. We will not allow any user, any citizen to pay more on behalf of us. I'll say that on record right now. We will pay more if that's the case. So make sure that doesn't happen. We can't get.
I think we all have the same end goal, so I appreciate that. Ed had a comment?
Well, no, I was just curious, and again, it might be my misconception here. I was under the, opinion that if there's a lump sum payment made towards the loan, not the operation and maintenance, towards the loan, that loan repayment would not be applied to Burke's bill. Everybody else in town will have to pay off the rest of the loan. Is that not correct?
Yeah, so if Burke did pay that off, they would not have that debt
Right.
payment associated.
So it would not be on Burke's per gallon usage bill. But every other user in town would have to pay off the balance of the rest of the loan, correct?
Correct.
That is why if Burke pays, their bills go up. Whereas if the city says, well, we're just going to have everybody pay for the loan, and we'll just take it out for how many years, then that's why then the rate per 1,000 gallons per resident would be less. It all has to do with, do you get absolute no capital costs, not capital, but loan costs applied to your bill or not? I think that those numbers were different up there. Was because of that. I may be wrong, but I'm just throwing that out there. That's kind of what I was going under when I was asked for this. What would the per gallon cost be if they had to pay for the loan, or they give you a lump sum payment and they don't have to pay for the loan at all? And what's the sunset clause on that? Well, is it 30 years? That's where everybody else is paying off the rest of the loan. So the lump sum payment, is that for 30 years or not? So those are some questions that I'm throwing back out to council to have to consider when you consider rates. And there's two buckets, as you pointed out. There's the O&M cost, and there is the cost for the loan. So just so that this idea that, well, if we pay this, everybody pays more. Well, no, it's not quite that way. If you pay less, and everybody else pays more. If you don't pay it, everybody else pays the same going up. Then it's spread out. Fair, unfair, I don't know. I'm just giving you background there so the council can understand where these numbers came.
Yeah, we're saying, like, if we pay it, our rates would be different, would be lower because we paid that. Yeah, you're right. We're saying the same thing.
Right. Yeah, no, I'm just saying that that's how by you paying a lump sum up front, the citizens actually pay more because the balance of the loan now is being paid by everybody else, not first. Whereas if you don't take the money, then you spread the cost of all of the loans evenly across. So everybody's per gallon rate is actually going to be less. It's just mathematics on that. Now, good, bad, and different, I'm just saying, that's how those numbers, why they're different.
Theoretically, would everybody have more money with that fund, less interest?
No, because
Yeah, that's true.
it's broken up on two different loans. Yes, you could look at it from that standpoint, but because we have a 30-year loan on it, we don't actually start paying principal on that loan until 2042. All we're paying is interest, and that interest, I believe that, what's that interest, Karen, 1.8 per year until 2042, and then we have the interest plus the principal that starts in 2042. That's why she has the other figure for 18.9 per 1,000 gallons. Per user would be 65.8. But to what Chad was saying, I appreciate you saying that. You know, and maybe that's what we need to get back into discussion about and figure out what that amount would be, so it does make it easier across the whole entire board.
We can't get, what I'm hearing is we're using it we're looking at it one way in one scenario, but we're looking at it a different way in a different. Yeah, that's how you can get the different numbers. If you look at it the same way in both scenarios, we can't get the different. So, happy to dig in, let the accountants dig in that.
Well, as a council person, I think a really important message is what you said to us, and we value your company, everything about so important. I need another work, really, you know, to come back with some choices for us that we can understand, or we would ever be able to think, you know, but that needs to happen, I think, more.
Yeah, and I mean, if we thank you, for us, at some point in time, sooner rather than later, need some clarity on what approach to raise we want to start talking about. And our position is we've had an agreement in place for 4 years and it's worked fantastically, in my opinion. I think those who are in those meetings would voice that same thing. So are we going to approach it from that model and then work together to create something that makes sense based off of either the new technology or how the list, I mean, we got different companies probably need to take into account. Or are we going to go to a brand new model that's that's unusual and unique from our perspective? Just one comment, we're different than Mr. Ross and how we explain the technical basis of our cost share. All we want is a technical basis for whatever rate model we move to, so we can understand it. If you remember, we spent several meetings on the position and the city/consultant's position that proper percent to use for Burke is 3.5, and here's all the reasons why. Okay? Well, when we did the math on the 3.5, Burke's portion was roughly $800,000 more than the city's total operating budget plus contingency. We said, this doesn't make sense. The city and the consultant said, let us rerun it. So now we're hearing all this basis on why, it should be 2.75, not 3.5. And let me tell you why. We're talking arbitrary numbers here, which we can't technically tie out, which we'll never be in agreement on. If years down the road, there's something that is disrupting your system, we want to be able to go to the assumptions we made and say, oh, here's what we missed. We can't foresee the future. Here's what we missed, let's talk about this and let's make it right. We'll be right there with you to solve that issue. If we don't have something that we can rely on, that will allow for those conversations down the road, what are we doing?
And I think going off your comments, I actually wrote a note here for a question I had, and might be more to Ed. So, you mentioned you were using that metric to try to get at what it costs to treat those different types of discharge. So if we do have industry that's monitored, are there models out there that base charges based off that exact discharge and what it costs? Because I think what I'm getting at is, we see in our numbers, we're allocating 80% of oxidation ditch to what Burke could potentially put out there, but they're incentivized to pay less, to send us less of those discharges, which gives us more capacity back. So I didn't know if that's a model that if you base it off of what the industry is sending, because I get your point, not everyone's going to monitor. I mean, our restaurants probably are going to put monitors there to monitor what they're sending out, but some of our big industry may know exactly what they're sending to us.
Well, there are concentration limits provided in some of the documents, some of the reports, saying is the sum of the BOD and the TFS and the total nitrogen, the total phosphorus, and the oil and grease. Is this number, between this number, you're this here. So we've summed up all the different loads that go to the plant and say you pay for this based on the concentration. The higher the concentration, the higher the tier. Now, again, you also have it based on the water usage. So let's say you're really super concentrated, so you only send 1,000 gallons a month. Well, all right, you're tier 3, but your flow is so low, you don't have that big of a bill. On the other hand, let's say you're tier 2, but you're sending 500,000 gallons a month. Well, yeah, you're paying less. It's a 2.5 at that time, a 2.5 multiplier, but look at the flow. So then you're paying more money. So you're incentivized economically to send less. So concentration, volume is 10. And the whole idea is if you get your treatment by industrial pretreatment, get it down to domestic limits, then you're paying the same as the homeowner, but you got more flow. So you pay dollars, but you're paying the same rate as the homeowner. That's the whole idea, and that's like what the city of Fort Madison used to put like a hospital or McDonald's or some of these other businesses into those tiers. Now, there's also in their ordinance, you can challenge it annually if you need to be in that tier. You have to have the city or a third-party contractor go out and take some samples to show what's actually being discharged. Now, I will tell you what happened in Keokuk is they had one industry, ADM, because of the amount they were discharging, they didn't even bother with the tier. They were measuring their flow every day, they were taking a sample every day, and they were billed for every day's worth of discharge. Now, with something like that, you can say, well, if you're going to monitor consistently, we're just going to bill you this rate per pound, because we know how many pounds are coming out, and we know your flow. So we don't have to make you a deal. Unfortunately, there's nobody in this town that is sampling every bit of the flow coming out of their plant. So you can't really offer that. If you had an industry in town, the closest one will be Provider. They have a sampler that measures everything coming out of their plant. So you could actually sit there and say, because you're measuring all of this, we're not going to put you in a tier system. We're going to say, based on your concentration and poundages discharged, 24/7, 365 days out of the year, we'll create your bill from that. So they actually have the capabilities of doing that. They just have to set up to collect the sample. They're getting that done. And then they can actually set up with a laboratory. So now it's a microvac down in Newton or SHL, and NC to run their samples for them. You can do something like that. You can write it in your ordinance that if you are monitored 24/7, 365, then your system doesn't apply to you. We're gonna bill you on your flow and your boundaries. You're done. Whereas if you are not monitored 365, then you don't get that. We have to make you a tier because we have no way of knowing. Now, okay, and I'm not to bash on Burke here, but Burke does not sample every day and doesn't sample everything they do. There are sewer lines taking like overflows from sumps that aren't even monitored. So all of that, you don't know how much they're sending to you. Billing wise, even at their current sampling location, they don't do it every day, so you don't know how much surcharge. You only surcharge on the days you make it, not every day. So those are things that you have to consider if you're going to look at this thing. We're not going to use the tier on you at all. We're just going to give you a billing for your flow and your poundages. You've got to make sure your ordinance states as such. You get that, you must do the following.
Am I correct, something about how you're actually billing now? You're taking the average concentration for certain points of control line. Just like agreement with staff 25 years.
Is it, or is it every day you make it?
It's the average.
The average, okay.
That's what our current agreement
So
states.
in the tier situation, I'm thinking about this.
Well, then you can't really do an accurate average rate if you're not measuring every day.
Price and agreements and that will like, you're gonna price all the days.
I know, I've worked this way where they've done it all the time. And in fact, one with a Hormel plant in Davenport, they measured every day. It's now TV line.
But I think it's important to know that we sample based off of the ordinance that the city has provided us with on the frequency of sampling and how they want us to sample, which agency wants to do the sampling. So that's
Yeah,
not,
and I believe the new agreement, says 5 days out of 5 out of the 7 days a week is what we would like you to sample.
I mean, yeah.
Obviously, we haven't agreed on everything yet, and we're still working through it, but I believe the previous agreement stated 3 out of the 7 days.
Right.
Yeah, so,
And my point is just that we're not arbitrarily sampling to try to misconstrue or to misrepresent numbers. It's a firm agreement as to what we sample, how we sample.
right. No, yeah, I agree with that.
But I didn't say that you weren't doing all of that. I'm just saying, if the city council wants to say we don't want to hear on you, you must do it 7 days a week. And to be honest with you, I asked Julie Foss, current treatment agreement, is that just on where it's being discharged, or was that for all of the processed water being discharged from her? And she was very quiet for a minute. She said, well, it should be all of it. And I believe the new NPDS permit will have as stated that all processed water has to be.
Again, we continue to get sidetracked on the arbitrary what ifs and what ifs and what ifs and what ifs, where difficulty is trying to find what is the foundation to build from. This is where we're spinning our wheels, so we can't get alignment, and every time we think we've made progress, it's something else that, oh, well, what, if you did do this, then this would happen, and that would happen, and that would happen. But, okay, if that's what you want us to look into, we'll look into that, and let's talk about that, but we can't get alignment on what do you want us to talk about? What do you want us to make progress on? We got there's really 3 components. One is the capital portion. Okay, we're gonna have assume a similar process and opportunity to review that we've had to review the last 2 times. I see going as smooth as it can be. Number 2, the operating budget. This is a general citizen of the data question on what do you want added to the rates and not added to the rates as it relates to a contingency. We're gonna follow right along with all that. We're gonna voice our opinion. That should be a perpetual ongoing fund. Number three, how do you want us to just start discussing rates? Are we saying that you want us to rip up? Do you want to have some sort of review process where the city can gather options, where Burke and Hormel can gather options? We can get really technical on why both sides feel that this is the right path to go. But you might understand it with all your degrees, but it's super complicated. But we need to know what's the next step that we can help in this process. It's going to be open before we know it. And we haven't even put this in front of our attorneys to review all the land and all that stuff, Jason. So,
Chad, I completely agree with some of the things you're saying, and I really appreciate what you said earlier, where you don't want the citizens innovative paying for a first portion of this plant. That's really important. I'm glad you said that. I think I need a little more clarity and a little more definition on what contingencies we're planning for. What problem are we trying to solve with this new tiered system? I'm still struggling a little bit with that. If we could clarify that and then provide that info to Burke, maybe we can find a way to achieve some common ground on this.
We need to cover our operating and maintenance as well as the debt schedule. That is purely the reason why we have some of the fees the way they are. If we need to restructure things, I said this in another meeting, that if we need to look at the tier system and try to go away from that, I'm more than willing to look at that and go away from that. But essentially what we need money for is we need money for operation and maintenance and to cover our debt. To have a reserve, that way if anything goes wrong, we have that reserve, as well as the 10% extra for the SRF. So
those are all hard numbers, or at least estimates that we can compare, right?
we did prepare those, and that is what we're discussing. That is something that Burke does not agree with, is the numbers that was presented, which is that $2.8 million, which is the operating and maintenance.
Right.
I think it's been a good discussion. I think this has been helpful. Hopefully you all feel that way to the process. I think it's been helpful for council to hear more of the history that they've probably not been privy to over the years, because there's a long history here. And I think that, to Steve's point, the tier system, I think for in some cases, you're looking at, okay, this restaurant's throwing a bunch of grease down that costs more to treat than your family with people showering and flushing toilets. So I think conceptually that's where it comes from. I think in this case, you have a more sophisticated heavy user that may have other abilities to work with our staff to do more detailed sampling. So I don't know if, we have the rate or the tiered option in front of us. I don't know if we can go back and look at what it could look like if we looked at the current model where there's sampling involved, and figure out what holes staff may see in that and button that up a little bit more so we have options to look at, because then we could look at what numbers need to be in that model to make everything balance with all the other rate users.
Yeah,
That's to Steve's point.
So I don't disagree with that, but this will be the third time that we've presented different rates to Burke with no input on where you'd like to see aside from what we're discussing right now. That's what I would like. I would like you guys to let us know, talk with us about the rates, share with us what the problems you see and where we can work on those.
We have that.
Well, and
It's about paying for what we use. It's all based off of technical data, and we probably, how soon can we have that? Okay. Tomorrow. I mean, we already had it created. It's anybody willing to look at it.
So what I'm hearing is you need to look at that data and look at what the per discharge poundage model would look like. And then obviously, like I said, we have the tiered model in front of us that can be massaged. But I think if we can get everybody collaborating on those numbers, that would be helpful in the meantime. Obviously, council need to look further at the contingencies, and if they feel that part is appropriate, is the second piece of more of the unknowns.
Yeah, I think we can do that for sure.
And part of it, I think, too, is, you know, what's reasonable that we can actually get to each year, and what's that gonna cost? Because we do think being aggressive on I is in everybody's best interest. I think knowing, okay, how much can we pull off, you know, and make an impact, because, you know, we don't want I to be going on for the next, I mean, it'll always be ongoing, but we need to catch up and have an idea of what that's gonna look like, so.
And one of the things that I noticed, just looking at this is, and I would have to confirm with Karen, but if you were to pay that debt, the operating and maintenance would automatically be decreased by that 300,000 that's on here. So that would be your 2.5 million rather than the 2.8 million. But I would have to double check with Karen, we'd have to run those figures, but that's how I would see that, because of your portion of the debt, that would be decreased. So,
So she's saying the 10% charge wouldn't go on there on this part?
yeah, if I'm doing it right, I don't know, we'd have to, yeah.
The thing council heard that needs to be her follow-up? Ed?
Well, not to throw, you know what, in the punch bowl, but, you already approved rates. What, back in September, is that correct, Karen? The council not approve, a rate structure?
I believe it was in November, and yes, we approved that, and that's something that we'll probably have to discuss and figure out for the next council meeting.
Right, because
And
it goes
basically
into effect, not to interrupt, but it goes into effect automatically, what, July 1?
July 1, yep.
Right.
So that's something that we'll have to work on. Basically, what that ordinance is it's $10.80 per 1,000 gallons, and then an additional $53 per bill, which would be the debt. So that's basically the amount that we receive in for the consumption is what we would manage the operating and maintenance, and then that additional 53 would bring in $1.8 million for the debt alone that we need to cover. So,
Yeah, and again, not to paraphrase things, FERC doesn't want to be viewed as everybody's bill went up because of FERC. That's something that, come July, the homeowners in town aren't going to be happy with.
that's beside the point. We'll work on things, and we need to schedule another meeting, whether it's a work session here with the council, that's more than okay, or if it's something that we get on a Zoom call and talk about. Greg, I appreciate that you're going to be sending those numbers over to us hopefully tomorrow, but if it's the end of the week, it's a short week, I completely understand, so.
And I guess I'd ask council, would you prefer that there are more work session pieces as we go along before you see this again?
I don't know that we need to see all the nuts and bolts of this thing, but I guess I'd like to see, some scenarios put together, like, all right, if we do the tiered system, it looks like this. If we go back to the old model we used to work for years, it looks like this.
That's what I was trying to get to, and
Yeah.
I need options like
Right.
that that are really concrete, to be making, it's a really big
And
decision
then-
for us too, so.
And you all need to be in a position, hopefully, to make a decision in a month from now.
And with each of those, here's the assumptions we made related to
We're not waiving the November thing, because that was just a place. We had to do it to time.
So we do have to figure something out.
To
whether we
replace that.
repeal it or- Yeah, so that's something that we need to get figured out within the month of June, that way we don't have that starting July. It is gonna be a burden.
It might be good if the first meeting in June, there's some options for all of you to chew on, because I think you'll probably want some direction coming out of that, so it can be massaged and finalized at the last meeting. Then you'll probably want to look at waiting some readings to get the new rates done. If it's possible.
Always possible, never my recommendation.
Well, even in that case, in worst case, everyone has one bad bill, and then hopefully it's readjusted for August.
That was a funding point.
Or especially,
Yeah,
Always an option. Yeah, we might have to just do that. That way we don't have to waive anything.
yeah. Have weekly meetings in June.
Whatever it takes.
Is there anything else, comment from anyone present?
Good.
Also good? Everybody, staff understand kind of where we're going? Okay, then I guess we can, again, thank everyone for coming, having the discussion with us tonight, and we can adjourn this work session, and we'll be in touch next steps, but I think the goal, having some more resolution and clarity with options by the first meeting in June, is what I'm hearing.
Sounds good.